Hello and welcome to our Safety 2016 Key Issue Roundtable training. My name is Dan McNeil and I'm Manager of Education here at ASSE. Our training today should take about 10 minutes to go through, and it's really just an overview of the roundtables and how to facilitate them and record them and all that kind of fun stuff. First off, thank you very much for agreeing to be a facilitator or recorder. We're really happy you can do this. This is a session, the roundtables are sessions that our attendees enjoy very much. It's an opportunity for them to freely discuss some of the hottest topics in occupational safety and health. So again, thank you very much for your time in being a facilitator or recorder. Again, this training should take about 10 minutes to go through. At the very end of it, I will give you my email address and phone number in case you have any questions. But for right now, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so in this training, we will go over the 3 steps to recording or facilitating a successful key issue roundtable discussion. We'll look at some best practices. We'll also look at some delivery options, as well as some sample roundtable write-ups. All right, so before we get into the 3 easy steps to making your roundtable successful, let's quickly kind of get a quick disclaimer of what a roundtable is. For a lot of you, this will be a reminder, but just for some of you who are new to doing a key issue roundtable, just realize that this is a discussion. It's not an eyes forward presentation. There are no PowerPoint slides. It is just a discussion. And you're up there to kind of facilitate that discussion to make it successful. Again, there's no AV, there's no slides. It's just you, a room full of people who want to be there and discuss that topic, and some flip chart paper. So you're there to kind of get that discussion going and to make it engaging. A few things to keep in mind about that. Don't be upset if only 2 people show up to your session. Most often than not, the roundtables will have more than 2 people, but there have been some times when there's been a very small session. So don't be upset about that. Just realize those 2 people or those 5 people are the people who really are engaged about that topic and want to talk about it. They want to be there, so engage with them, value their experiences, get them to share their ideas, and just make it worth the time for them to be there. All right, so now that we've kind of gotten that out of the way, let's now go into the 3 main things you can do to make your roundtable successful. Now remember, you only have 60 minutes to make this an engaging discussion, and these tips are things we've kind of learned over the years from other people who've done these, of things that you can do to make this an engaging, informative discussion. All right, so the first step is to introduce and engage. Now this should only take about 5 minutes. Again, you only have 60 minutes for the entire roundtable, so you kind of want to get things moving quickly. So in that first 5 minutes, you want to briefly introduce the roundtable and give attendees a quick overview of how things will work. Remind them again that this session is for them to discuss ideas. There's no formal agenda, with the possible exception of the questions that you want them to begin discussing. And a lot of times those questions will be formed by them too. But you may want to come prepared with some questions kind of in your pocket to get the discussion going. Don't assume that people in the room know more or less than you do. You might want to start by asking people to hold up their hands if they've been involved with a topic for more than a certain number of years, why if it's new to them, or if they come to the room with some experience. But most importantly, explain why this topic is so urgent, and try to create a call to action. Get them engaged, get them excited about discussing this topic further. All right, so you got them pumped up, you got them engaged, you got them ready to begin this discussion. The next thing you want to do is to facilitate and record the session. That's going to be the bulk of your time here. So plan for about 40 minutes for that. As I mentioned earlier, you might want to come to the roundtable with some questions in mind, some questions that you want them to begin discussing. And again, more often than not, they're going to be the ones coming up with their own questions that they want to discuss, but you should always come prepared with some that are kind of get them moving, get them engaged quickly. So once you do that, once you get the discussion going, you want to ensure that each participant has time to be heard. You don't want people kind of filibustering or taking control of the conversation or taking control of the discussions. You want to try to ensure some even participation. If one or two people are dominating the discussions, then try to call on others and try to get them involved. If you have a large group, you may want to divide those up into smaller groups to discuss the issues. So that as a facilitator, that's your job to make all that kind of stuff happen. As the recorder, you're the person who is recording the event, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit more later. But the recorder should be the person tracking the critical points, utilizing the flip chart paper in the room. If you have a large crowd, you can divide them into groups and have them pick a person from their small group to act as the recorder. So in that situation, you're kind of walking around the room, making sure that they know what they're putting down on there. But if you have a larger group, they could be recording their own points on the paper. Just make sure they know how to do that and how to record it and what to record. All right, so finally, you want to conclude your roundtable discussion. Now, this will be about the last 10 minutes or so of your roundtable. During this time, you want to summarize the points that the group discussed. If you had divided the room into smaller groups, you might want to go around the room and have a representative from each group discuss their main points, their main takeaways of what was discussed in their groups. You may also, during this time, discuss potential next steps for the topic. For example, and this can be something that they brainstorm as well as a large group, but things that might want to happen after this roundtable ends. For example, if someone wanted to write an article about the topic, or if there's some additional training that could be proposed for this, whether it's a webinar or a session at PDC next year. But just give them some ideas for things that they may want to do after this. A lot of times we've had situations where the group continued on, where they may meet when they go back after PDC and have an opportunity to maybe get on a teleconference and continue the conversation that way. So, during the conclusion, as you wrap things up, try to get a feel for that. All right, so we spent a little bit of time here just kind of going through the main parts of your roundtable. Let's focus a little bit of time now on some best practices. So what should you do before you get to your roundtable? As I mentioned earlier, there is no need to prepare slides. This isn't a formal presentation. But your role as a facilitator, again, is to keep people engaged, to get the discussion going. But there are some things you can do to prepare yourself for that. And basically, there's two kind of main things. First is a focusing statement. This is essentially what's in your roundtable description. It's what the basis of the discussion in your room will be about. But this should be a tightly worded goal, basically, of what the discussion should be centered around. Next is a set of questions. We mentioned this a couple times earlier here, but the questions should just be things that kind of get that call to action going. They shouldn't be anything that you have to hold the discussion to, but just a kind of a list of thought-provoking questions that get the discussion started. Okay, so what are some things you can do during your roundtable? First off, and most importantly, and I probably have mentioned this a few times already, is you want to emphasize interactivity. You want to get them engaged. You want them to really get into this discussion. So you want to make it easy for your people to participate. You want them to ask questions and use the group to add to your expertise in the topic. So if you know some stuff, obviously you're there to kind of share that as well. But work with the group to bring out their expertise. Secondly, be a good host. Kind of think of this as a house party, something you're doing at your house, and good hosts are friendly. They'll kind of introduce each other. They'll set the tone for the party. So, kind of think of it that way. That's kind of a good way to keep a relaxed tone in the room as well. You want to be friendlier and more extroverted than usual, just like you would if you were throwing a party at your house. If you know any people in the room, use them to your advantage. Ask them to come up with more questions. Ask them ahead of time to kind of help you to engage the rest of the room. And finally, and as I just mentioned, relax and have fun. Remember, you set the tone. If you're friendly and relaxed, people will be more friendlier and more relaxed and more willing to discuss the issues. If you're not, if you're kind of scared and quiet, people will react the same way. So just try to relax and have a good time with it. All right, so what do we do next? After this discussion is over, what happens? Well, this is where the role of the recorder becomes so important. As a recorder, your job is twofold. You want to obviously help jot down the ideas as they come across, and you need to share those ideas and conclusions with ASSE members. So we'll talk a little bit about that here. Your key issue roundtable doesn't take place in a vacuum. At the end of the day, the ideas that your attendees come up with should be shared and learned from by the wider community. So that write-up becomes really important. So your job as the recorder is to take the information that was discussed in your session and to summarize it and to share that back with ASSE. Basically, what you're going to be doing is emailing that information to me, and I'll have my contact information on here when we wrap things up here. But usually I'll ask for it. I'll start bugging you about 2 or 3 weeks after the conference ends. If you can get it to me sooner than that, that's obviously better. But try to aim for 2 or 3 weeks after the end of the conference to write up that summary. In your write-up, you should have the title of the session, the names of the facilitator and the recorder, the number of attendees that were in the room with you, and then get into an overview of what the topic was that was discussed, bring up some of the key questions or discussion points, wrap things up, and if you guys in the room discuss this, look at some next steps, some action items, and things like that. So we talked a little bit earlier about where these roundtables may go after the session ends. We mentioned, the write-up may lead to an article being written in PSJ, or may lead to a webinar being delivered later on, or another educational session at PDC next year, for example. But more importantly, these write-ups help us to get to a place where we can keep the discussion going. And this may be something where we end up sharing it on the portal pages on ASSE. Again, to get the information out there so that other folks in ASSE can talk about this more. That's really the whole idea of what the roundtables are about, is to, again, encourage people to volunteer, to engage with other members. It's really about sharing these ideas within the larger safety community and keeping that discussion going. All right, well, that's about all that I had. You'll notice here the contact information that you can reach me at. When you're on site at PDC, definitely feel free to call me or text me with any questions you may have. All right, so related to that is the second part of the required training to be a facilitator or recorder. Really, I look at this as an opportunity for us to meet up one last time before you begin to do your sessions on Monday. But it is a required piece of this, so I do want you all to be there. This will happen on Sunday, June 26th at 4 p.m. And we will be on the Level 2 concourse outside B214. Now this is right past the entrance to the expo. It'll be outside in the hallway area. There'll be some tables set up. But this is a really important time for you to ask any last minute questions, for me to make sure that everyone is there and has everything they need to be successful. So do plan to be there. Again, Sunday, June 26th, 4 p.m. On the Level 2 concourse, right outside B214. We will be sending you information about this, just so you have the room and everything, or the area, in front of you. But again, do plan on being there. And this shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. So again, thank you all very much for agreeing to be a facilitator or a recorder at ASSE's Key Issue Roundtables. This is, again, a very important event, and we're so happy that you can be part of this. If you have any questions regarding this presentation or anything else regarding the roundtables, feel free to call me or email me. And if I don't hear from you, I look forward to seeing you all in Atlanta. Thanks.